Well, hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Recipe for Homeschool Success Summit. We at Masterbooks are excited to have this particular talk for you. We are in the language arts section of this summit, and I have Carrie Bailey, who is the author of Stepping Stones and Simply K and Catch On to Cursive, as well as being the co-author of Math K, and Katelyn Morris, who is a fabulous homeschool mother who also helps in the Masterbooks app and the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group. She's got a lot of wisdom on this topic. And the topic we're talking about today is lessons that stick, how the Masterbooks method works to help your student retain concepts, not just learn it for a test, not just learn it for a moment, but how to get their brains working in a way that concepts really stay with them. So welcome, ladies. I'm thankful that you're here with me today.
I'm glad to be here.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I want to start off by talking to Carrie about not avoiding the fundamentals or the easy stuff, because we understand that many of you are busy and you might feel a little overwhelmed. You might feel like I don't have to do this part. They already know their ABCs, or they already know this, that, and the other. And so you would want to maybe skip the stepping stones and the Simply K. Carrie helped design the Masterbooks method of education. And so she has the wisdom, the schooling, the understanding of why those are important, even if they already know some of those things. So Carrie, take it away.
So one of the things that I would like to start off with is stepping stones. It's kind of the basis. And what that course does is just get the students ready for learning in general, understanding that we are going to sit down and we are going to give our attention to something, especially in our electronic driven world that we are in. It's extremely difficult to hold children's attention anymore. My own children included. And so one of the things that this course does is helps the student to build up stamina. It helps them to make connections to what they are learning, to the world around them. And it also gives them biblical basis for them to see. We talk about Bible heroes, so they can see it was really just ordinary people that the Lord used. And that foundation will help them to build and grow on. And then once they move into Simply K, you might think, well, I've already tried to teach my children some letters, or they already know their letters. The problem is that what I am seeing, not just in the homeschool, but also even in the public school community, is if we do not get that foundation of letters and sounds, then we can't build on, and we're going to have holes and gaps, and then our students are going to become struggling readers. It doesn't actually state, there's even a new study out for preschool asking, is it even beneficial? And they're trying to follow children to see the benefits. Right now, what they have said is putting children in like a preschool, and then later looking at them, they aren't really seeing an increase in their reading ability or any of their academics, which is very interesting to me, because we've all been told early education, early intervention, that's where it is. And sometimes that's the public school sector. And so for homeschoolers, we know that we can take a step back and say, okay, this is the foundation that my child needs. And until they get this foundation, that's what Masterbooks does. We teach to mastery. Until they get this foundation, we're not going to move on to that next skill, which is the beauty of homeschooling. And so that's one of the reasons that I love it. And in the curriculum, we want those students to be fluent. And so what I mean by that, when I say that they need to fluently know their letters and sounds before they start reading, they need to be able to, within 3 seconds or less, by looking at a card, those cards that are in Simply K, or even just looking at the ABC chart. That's why I say go over that every single day, because that is one of the most important things to build up fluency. It's been proven I personally, it's one of those research-based versus evidence-based. Evidence. I have seen the evidence in my own children, in the students that I've taught before. So it's evidence-based, not just someone looking at a text and stating, oh, here's what we should do. No, this is actually real life been put into practice. And so it's very important that we don't skip those things. We don't skip those steps. We don't skip the way that we write our letters, that we take our time. Even if you have to spend 2 lessons a lesson for 2 days, you should still do that, because it's going to lay that foundation that your students need over just trying to get through the course in the amount of time that you think it needs to be gotten through.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have cursive. In the cursive course, one of the things that is amazing about cursive, and I almost want everyone to just begin there, but I realize that that's not the norm. But I'll also talk about in Simply K, and even in the manuscript course that's going to be published hopefully soon this year.
Yeah, we're actually not far away from that.
Yes. So I'm very excited about that. But there are some letters that I chose to begin them at the bottom. And I will never forget that I caused an uproar in the Masterbooks, Moms of Masterbooks community. But the difference is that when we can have fewer strokes, and what I mean by that is, like, if I said that letter N was one of them. So instead, I just have the child go up, slant down, and back up. And the reason I did that, everyone's like, oh, well, that promotes dyslexia. Actually, no, it might be how a dyslexic child looks at things, but that's also going to help them. So even in the print course, there are a few things that were done and tweaked to help students with dyslexia that everyone else might think, well, that goes against every other handwriting curriculum. Okay, it does. You're right. But I'm okay with that, because, again, Masterbooks thinks outside of the box. And so the less strokes that we can have to help the students is actually going to help them. And so when we look at cursive writing, we say, and we know, one, cursive is faster, especially once you become fluent. There's that word again. And then also with cursive, if you will think about, like, dyslexic children, or any children really, some even neurotypical children, some children with other disorders such as like ADHD or autism, they don't see the world the same way that we see the world. I have 3 children with ADHD, and I can tell you, watching them is where I actually was like, well, why have I been teaching them a letter this way? They made it this way, and that actually seems better. And so when I began researching it, it was.
Okay.
But in cursive, they see a lot of times whole to part instead of part to whole. And that's also true in their reading as well. Now, that doesn't mean in reading we don't teach them the strategies that they need or break things down for them. But first, if we can look at the whole thing and then begin dissecting that word, well, that's what cursive does. If you'll think about the word the, THE, if I'm writing it in manuscript, it's 3 separate letters. But if I look at that in cursive, it is one unit. It's one word. And so it becomes a word in their mind better. And as they're writing it, they're going to make those connections better. We know that, obviously, our historical documents are written in cursive. The Declaration of Independence and other documents. That's important for our kids to be able to read. I mean, history, especially nowadays, I feel like can be ever changing, even though it really doesn't, because it's there. But in our society, it appears that we like to change the view of our history. And so it's important that we actually look at those documents and we can read them and know them.
Absolutely.
A lot of people will advocate for teaching cursive from the very beginning. And to me, it's one of those where it's just a preference. If I could have chosen, especially now that I know, because I'm always learning, and I love learning. So if I would have known what I know now, I probably would have started my son with cursive writing. I just feel like it's easier. The other thing that's great about cursive writing, you'll notice like a manuscript, which would be the print version of a B and a D or a P and a Q. What's the other letters that they common? They flip them because in their mind, it's just like this little pen here that has a dinosaur on the top. So I can say, well, the dinosaur's at the top. But some children still don't have that ability to look and say, well, now the dinosaur's on the bottom, and to see that difference and recall that difference, or to say which way is the dinosaur looking, like each time I turn it, they may not notice that difference. And a lot of times children with dyslexia, that's what's going on. And even developmentally, children do that up to age 9 because that object permanence just isn't there yet. It hasn't fully developed. And then with cursive writing, that's one of the reasons I would start it first, is because it actually reduces any of those. I mean, think about that. Almost every single letter in cursive begins at the bottom, at the baseline. Now I'm going to say that again. Every letter, almost every letter in cursive begins at the baseline. So again, we come back to that point of those children don't see things the way that we see things. And a lot of times we try to make it well, cursive is an art. Cursive is a preference. Okay. Some people say cursive isn't necessary. It actually increases our neurons in our brain and the connections that are made, which is absolutely amazing, that it enhances brain development and it even improves fine motor skills. That's why there are so many exercises in the cursive course, and don't skip those either because that's one of those things that if those muscles are not developed and exercised, then they are going to struggle more and they're going to have pain during writing, which I have children who have done that. And so it's one of those things that's why I'm like, that's why we've got to put this in there. The visual discrimination, the visual tracking, all of those things are important for handwriting, for reading. Those are very important basic things that are in those exercises. So definitely do not skip those.
Well, I love the Masterbooks blog that you wrote that talks about the science of cursive. It really helped me as an individual because it made the connection to me that it's more like art and I am more creative. And so the activity of doing something with my hand and my brain that is more creative, it just made sense to me that that's what I needed to do in journaling. And it would be much better to journal on a piece of paper with a pen than it was to type. That was one of the things that it brought out.
Yes, definitely. So I can't remember the statistics of how much more we remember if written than versus typing, but it's a big difference. So anytime we can write something down, I even will keep Post-it notes and I'll just post them on my desk. And it's not necessarily that I need to reference the Post-it note, but by writing that down, then I'm going to remember that more than I would if I didn't do that.
Absolutely true. And let me give you a personal story. So my nephew just graduated from high school and I wrote him the sweetest card, words of affirmation, all about his future success and my prayer to God. And I wrote it in cursive, not thinking about the fact that he couldn't read it. And God bless him. His family has taught them to read every card out loud when you're opening presents in front of somebody. And he struggled. And none of those words meant anything because he was trying to read. He wasn't trying, it was too difficult. It made me so sad because I really wanted to bless him, and it was too much of a struggle. And I didn't know that he didn't read cursive. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for the people who are choosing Catch On to Cursive, choosing this just for brain development and for so they don't miss out on special things like that.
Definitely. That is so true. There are times that I'll go to write something and I'll be like, oh, but this is a teenager. I don't know if they know how to read in cursive. And that's so
Yeah.
sad to me. But it's true. And even my own children, I kind of have a mixture, just how I write, of cursive and print. So it's
Mhm.
hilarious because my my youngest was learning cursive and he's like, what is this? And I'm like, well, I don't write in just all cursive. I have a mixture. It's just what I do. But it's hilarious because, like, for me, it's easier to write a lowercase b in print and
Mhm.
quicker than it is in cursive. So I almost always write a lowercase b in print, like in
Mhm.
manuscript, and not in cursive, but it's mixed in with the rest of my cursive. So
Yeah,
it's
that's
funny.
fun. So, Katelyn, tell us a little bit about your experience as a homeschool mom and as a moderator for the Master Books Tribe, the different platforms. What are you seeing as far as people maybe wanting to skip the easy stuff, and how has your family done this part?
It is so tempting to want to skip over things that look like on the surface they're going to take a lot of your time. And I'm the kind of mom that wants to maximize the most time I can out of my day to get the
Sure.
most done. And even though I've got a dishwasher running, the washing machine going, I still run out of time every day. And so honestly, there are days I'll look at that science experiment and I'll say, nope. But that's the very thing that would mean the most to my child that day if I get the stuff, if I go get some inexpensive, supplies. It doesn't
Mhm.
take that much effort. You know how sometimes we can tell ourselves, oh, I have to go all the way downstairs to do this task. Oh man, and we'll blow it out of proportion like crazy. And a 5-minute task in our minds is going to take 30 minutes. So we put it off and we put it off. When
Mm.
really, the more that we jump over those hurdles that we place for ourselves and make yourself just go do it, just go down the stairs, do the thing, get the thing, then I am breaking down those barriers that I'm creating for myself just as the mom. And that's kind of step one for me. So once I do that and I remind myself, this isn't all about me and my day and my preferences, which you're hearing a theme, right? Um, it's their day too. When dad gets home, what will they share with him about their day? Will they share, we got to like make pudding and we got to put gummy worms in it and we learned about these things? That's the stuff that they're going to remember when dad walks in, and they're going to be full of excitement over that.
Mhm.
So I guess my encouragement is when you look at those things, just take a minute, or if, because you can tell I'm kind of last minute, even do better than me, plan ahead, know what's coming, take that energy tank that you have as a mom and conserve that. So if you're going to plan on doing an activity that day, or take the time to uh, read with your child and take the time to learn their letter sounds. And sometimes it's grueling going, making every single sound. It can be grueling, but if you set yourself up for it and you conserve the right kind of energy for it, you'll do
Mhm.
it. And maybe dinner that night won't be awesome. And that's okay because you can't do it all. But you did the thing that day for your child that they needed. So I encourage you, gear up and don't skip those special things, because sure, there's a lot of stuff that we try to do and prioritize throughout the day. But the things that they remember are the things that they can put their hands on, that they
Mhm.
can move and experience. Those are the memorable things. And as an example, many years ago when they were little and it was getting to be Christmas time, I would make a list of our fun to do list. I made my list, and we were going to do a study about Christmas songs, or we were going to do all these fun things that I thought were fun. And then I sat down with my clipboard and said, okay, kids, what do you want to do this Christmas season? What's, on your to-do list? And there wasn't much crossover. And so they wanted to go looking at lights. They wanted to get hot chocolate. They wanted to go out in the snow, get with friends, and make cookies and all these messy, complicated things I was like resistant to. Whereas I wanted to keep it all nice and trim, tied with a little bow within my level of control. And it just taught me a lot that, I could push them, and I'm the mom and they're little, and I can make them do what's on my list. But that's not what's best for them. That's what would be best for me. So again, you're hearing that theme of what God's been working on in my life as a mom is giving up what I want for them. And it's a constant sacrifice. You're always giving of yourself, but it's for their betterment. So my encouragement is involve your kids on where they are and what's important to them. Really get to know them and how they learn best, and utilize the suggested materials because they are proven and they're there for a reason, because those activities and games and developmental steps, they really do help the lessons stick for your child. And in the end, it really wasn't that much effort, and you'll be so glad that you took the time to do it. You'll feel like you won the mom award that day.
Good.
And you did the thing.
Well, and what I hear you saying is, as this specific summit is all about a recipe for homeschool success, you are really helping the people who are listening to take that moment and decide what leads to success for this homeschool journey. Not what leads to less stress necessarily for me or less chaos, but a mind shift, a paradigm shift, so that this is about successful learning and a successful family learning experience. And I think that's a really good thing to just a minor little shift. And what I'm guessing you're both going to tell me is that everybody, including the mom, is going to have more fun at the end of the day. And you will have shared memories that are important to everybody.
Very true. Very true. Sometimes when we are going on family vacation, there's a total of 11 of us that will go together.
Wow.
And we over plan to the point where vacation isn't restful. And so that's one of the things I would also suggest. It's kind of like what Katelyn was saying is, when she asked her kids that Christmas list of what their things they wanted to do and how they didn't align. And that a lot of times, like our kids, they really are fine to just go swim in the pool wherever we're staying and not have like all these activities and all these things built in. So you don't have to add really a ton to what Masterbooks already has, but definitely don't skip those little things, because those little things usually are what pulls in the child and helps them to be engaged and helps those lessons to actually stick. They will retain that information. We know that it's proven anytime that we pull in a hands-on activity and activate all of our senses, that increases our retention of whatever we are doing, and we're going to remember those things.
That's such good wisdom. So talk to us, Katelyn, about the games and resources in different courses that we would want people to not skip.
There's a variety of resources that you're going to find in, for example, language lessons. There are a lot of games and activities in the back of that series that will help you make extensions on what you're already learning. So if you have a child struggling to remember their parts of speech, there's a lesson or a game on that can just help expand that. In the math lessons, there are manipulatives, so you can use those on repeat. You can come up with your own, story problems, and they can be silly, and that will actually help them. And in America's Story 3 this year, we were learning about the the setup of our government. And so I said, well, here you've got President Gummy Bear over here, and he's against President Graham Cracker. And here's what they're trying to campaign and all of that. And I just drilled it in. What are the three, branches of government? We just did that over and over again. And finally, after the third day, they were like, well, I want President Gummy Bear to win. And it was just so silly. But, we're not here to adhere to anyone else's standards. We're here to homeschool with, our personalities and with the personalities of our children. Sometimes they clash, but for the most part, they go really well. And okay, take game night, for example. Okay, sometimes in our family, that is the biggest source of fights, but it is what it is. And even those games in the back of the book, even if someone goes off like wailing, like, yeah, I didn't get a turn, or, all that stuff, there are lessons upon lessons. We can't even write all the lessons in the books on character or how to handle it when all these things go awry. It's all a part of living life together in homeschooling. And, they might not even remember the point of it all, but maybe the lesson that God wanted them to learn that day was to cooperate with the family, not to run away, to stay and finish the game because, take your family last name. Morris's finish what they start. Or maybe that's the lesson they needed to learn that day. But back to your point, there are a lot of really great resources that I think a lot of people don't even know are there. We're in a society that is in a hurry all the time. And we just want to say, well, I'm going to homeschool my kids and I'm going to get it done. And we're just going to get it over with and go do these other things. But I really encourage you, when you get your master books box day, sit with the materials, pray over the courses, and read every single thing. I mean, the notes from the authors are heartfelt and beautiful. They're not just pretty words to make it sound good. That's actually from their heart, how God gave them the heart for this course, what they want for your family, and how they want your family's faith to grow. Read all of those things, learn the way that the course is designed to be used, and utilize it. You can make adaptations that work for your student and your student's needs, because that's the beauty of homeschooling, is making those adaptations. But please look through the whole book and get to know it and all of the resources that are at your disposal. Because if you come to struggle with a certain concept, my bet is that there's something in that book that you might have overlooked that could be just the thing to help you. And if you've done all that and you still need help, that is where the Masterbooks communities come in play. Reach out on the app and in the Moms of Masterbooks Facebook group, and you will find suggestions and ideas and inspiration from other moms, ideas that they've even gone above and beyond with. So it's really wonderful to utilize the manipulatives, to play the games, take the time to do that, and maybe skip something that is really not going to mean as much to your child overall that day. But make a memory with them. Even if somebody gets upset, they'll calm down and it'll be okay at the end, and you'll have a great time learning together.
I love that. Such great advice from both of you. I did want to bring up language lessons for living education and the different ways that Kristen Pratt has designed for students to retain the lessons that they're learning. I have loved over the years seeing the students post their psalms, their poems, their art that is part of the lesson that goes along with the concepts that they're learning. So I really, if y'all have something you want to add about that, but it's warmed my heart to see it. And I know if that had been part of my education, I would have retained so much more. It would have just had more meaning to me. It would have made more sense.
That's very true. I actually was thinking about that course today. And one of the things, like right now, I don't know if you guys have heard about like the science of reading and how there's a big push for the science of reading. And if you look behind it, it fascinates me, which I love science anyways, and I love to know the why behind things. Mm-hmm. But that was one of the things that I have realized about language lessons is there are actually pieces of that in there. And I was like, oh, like this is why that's there. And I just like knowing and being able to see. And I thought the same thing, like if I were taught that when I was younger, then, like open and closed syllables, for instance. Well, what's the purpose of that? And so just things like that are in the course that help students with reading, and it helps them understand the why behind why this word is written this way, or why this letter makes this sound with this combination. So it's a really great resource.
Absolutely. And it makes me think when you're talking about that, the memories we can go back and say, my grandmother taught me this sewing activity. My grandfather gave me this piece of wisdom. And so because there was someone else involved with it and there was an emotional attachment there, all those things go toward remembering and remembering well and remembering in 4 decades, because those factors, because there was an activity, because there's somebody you loved, all those things. And so I really believe that as homeschool families, you are getting to create those connections that other students might not ever have, because someone who doesn't love them and care for them and nurture them as much as you do would be teaching them and teaching them in a room full of people who are distracted, all those things, so I just really want to applaud your choices to homeschool, your desire to teach them biblical principles every day in every subject. We are so thankful to partner with all of you. Katelyn, I did want to ask you about God's story. I think you've told me there's some printables that we want everybody to know about.
Yes. So in the language lessons for Living Education series, when you get to levels 3, 4, and 5, on day 4 of that daily schedule, you're going to get the opportunity to do copy work and some copying of some illustrations in the book. And they traditionally come from the 101 Bible stories. But since the book God's Story was released, which is a beautiful family book just to keep and to read through together as a family, I highly recommend that every family get it. And if I leave it on my coffee table, or I leave other books from Master Books that are interesting just on the coffee table, I look over and I see a few kids just grabbing it and because they're bored and reading it. And then they get excited and then they're really into it. But leave those sitting out, and you never know who you invite over who might reach for it and take a look. But with God's Story, they were able to develop an alternative for the 101 Bible Stories book on day 4. You can now instead utilize God's Story if you would like to instead. So when you go to the God's Story product page, scroll to the bottom and you'll find 3 options. There's level 3, 4, and 5 of some alternative worksheets. So you can download those. You will have to add them to your cart and then check out, but there's no cost to you.
Okay, good.
They go directly to your masterbooks.com account, and you can go there and find your downloads, and they don't expire. You can download them, print them as needed. If you're the kind of person that wants to cut off the binding of your book, now this is highly debatable. Everybody likes to do it differently, but you can cut the binding off. You can put your book in a binder. You can bind it yourself. But say you want to do that, you can print out those alternative worksheets and slide those in there before you stick it in your binder or with your machine, or however you prefer it to organize it. But you could stick those in there that way, and they're just going to flow nicely with your lessons. But what my family does is I'm a mean mama, so I make them do both. So that way they get more reading practice and more time spent in both of those resources, because they both provide a slightly different perspective. And my kids don't spend forever on their drawings. They do little quick stick figures. So it's not like I'm asking them to do tons, but it just gives them more exposure to the stories. And by the time your student goes through language lessons 3, 4, and 5, they will go through that entire 101 stories from the Bible
Mhm.
or the entire God's story book. And if you have them do both, they have spent 3 years going through both. So it's up to you how you guys want to do it. But it's so wonderful to have those as an alternative because God's story is also available in an audio format and a PDF, whereas 101 Stories from the Bible is not available in a PDF. So we like to give you guys options, and you can use them the way that you would like to use them for your preference and your family. And that's what I love about Master Books is it's highly adaptable to make it work for you and your child's level.
Mhm. Well, both of you have given us so much wisdom today. Thank you so much for caring about the community, the Master Books community, and offering your wisdom and your knowledge and your experience with your own children about how to make sure lessons stick. We really do. Master Books really does want to partner with you to be successful. And we hope that you've gotten a lot out of this particular talk. And we will see you back on the next talk. Thank you, Katelyn and Carrie.
Thank you.
Thanks.